It means being aware and expert in noticing how organizations learn and grow and develop. What are the qualities of a good organization that builds and thrives? And also, what are the qualities in the organization that stops it from moving forward? It means to, first of all, be in the moment, to be fully present. And there are different things I can be aware of. I can be aware of my hands and my body. I can be aware of you nodding your head as I speak. The first we call internal or intrapsychic. The second is we call dyadic. I can be aware of all of us together. I can be aware of us being at this conference. I can be aware of us being in Russia. So the awareness can get large or small or internal, or so awareness shifts. It's not any one thing. I think the biggest way to expand one's awareness is to live a full life. Read books, to travel to different countries, to be exposed primarily to people who are different than you. To not, we tend to, as people, often move towards sameness, to be with people who think the way we do, who act the way we do, who eat the same foods, who have the same political beliefs. When that happens, we don't grow as people and our awareness doesn't grow. But when I'm with somebody who's very different than me, I learn a tremendous amount. Well, internally, I can be aware of my thoughts, of my body. I can go to a body therapist, or I'll often send clients to massage therapists or body workshops so they can be aware of where they hold themselves tightly in their body, where they're loose, how they move. And often the awareness grows by getting feedback. Like I could ask you, what do you notice about me as I'm sitting? Notice my hands, because we can't often see ourselves. So awareness often grows by, whether it's internal or external, by getting feedback. In the Gestalt approach, presence has a very technical definition. It means, first of all, being present. Like, as I sit here, I'm thinking of the question, aware of the three of you. Okay. That's the being present in the moment. If I was bored, I might start thinking about when is lunch, or when does my plane leave. Now, once I'm present, to have presence means that I want to influence you. Because people in our profession, whether we're therapists or organizational consultants, are hired to impact people. So I want somehow, as I'm talking to you, I want to be interested in you and have you interested in me. That's the beginning of connection. Without mutual interest, that's the foundation for moving forward. And the purpose of presence is to make a connection. And once we have some connection and that I can impact you and influence you if I'm working with you as a therapist or as an organizational consultant. As an organizational consultant, I'm often working not with just one person, but with 5, 10, 20 people. And I have to establish the fact that I'm in charge and you're willing to listen to me. If that doesn't happen, if there isn't enough trust, then nothing can happen. Did you see the movie The King's Speech? Well, here was this sort of weird speech therapist, and here was the king, and the speech therapist was here. And he had to somehow get this king to follow him. So that's what the whole movie was about. Yeah. And every once in a while the king would go. And he'd say, you're nothing, I'm the king. And he'd change the hierarchy. So the speech therapist would apologize and become peers and be intimate and create enough trust so that he could teach the king how to be aware of what he did and how he stuttered. So he had a type of presence that worked. He didn't have the degrees. He didn't have the fancy office or the fancy clothes. But he was able to get the king's trust. And that's what presence does. It's my deceased colleague used to say, why should anybody ever listen to me? And as an organizational consultant, I have to have the organization, first of all, be able to listen to me and pay attention to me. If I can't do that, then I can't do anything. So that's what presence is about. Our presence is based on a lot of things. One of the advantages, part of my presence is based on my physical appearance. If I just sit here, I might not be seen as having a lot of power. So when I want to speak, I might use large motions. If I was a big man, a large man, if I walked in like this, I might scare the hell out of people. If I'm a woman, I might have to learn to talk with a big voice. So we use our body and we use who we are to establish our presence. These are big questions. Lots of people say, as human beings or as animals, we are programmed to be hierarchical. There's always somebody who is taller, smarter, prettier. And as human beings, we compare each other. When we live in an organization where the hierarchies are fixed, so there's a CEO, the head of the organization, boom, 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 boom. Or in a marriage, the man does the physical work, so he's at the top of the hierarchy. The woman does the cooking. What that does is it creates a form of predictability. So it creates safety. The downside is it diminishes creativity. So if a leader always knows everything, knows more than everybody else, then people will follow him or her. And everybody knows where everybody else stands. The downside is it might exhaust the leader. And people might not come up with new creative ideas to move the organization forward. In the organizations I work with, There are a number of people who have the capacity to be the new leader, and people know about it. So there's like you said, there's a cost to everything. Because if you don't have the hierarchy, then you can have chaos. If the hierarchy is too rigid, then it stifles creativity. So the hierarchy has to be flexible and has to be built on trust rather than fear. The person at the top of the hierarchy has to teach people below him or her how to be more competent than they are. And that's, some of our Gestalt practitioners' views on leadership. It's somebody who has studied, has learned a tremendous amount about themselves. What we really are at our core is we take a look at patterns, or it could be how we are together, how we speak. When we are asked, what's an organization, for example, we don't say it's a building, or we make cameras. We say it's people in relationship who have patterns. I would use the word, we notice. We notice what's going on. And we have a particular way of noticing. And we believe that once I notice my pattern of doing this, then I have a choice of continuing to do this or try something else. And so the Gestalt approach creates options and choice. Cause and effect is one paradigm. When I have an itch, I scratch it and I feel better. If I have a pain in my back, I go to a medical practitioner who helps me. So that's cause and effect. That's the basic paradigm of the West. We have a different model. Some of us, we call it relational Gestalt. On the surface, you are interviewing me. You are asking me questions, and I am trying to give you answers. But I'm watching your face nod, or smile, or not smile. So in truth, we are both creating this interview, as are you, as is him. And most people don't understand the concept of co-creation. So if you get a good leader, and you might say the organization did well because he was a good leader, that's cause and effect. But an organization doesn't do well unless the person knows how to lead and people know how to follow. So very early in my marriage, my wife was feeling some anxiety, and we went to a couples therapist. And one of the first questions were, how come the two of you decided that she would be anxious? And we realized that she was carrying the anxiety for the two of us. And the benefits of the anxiety was that she would wake up when the children would cry, and it allowed me to sleep. So it was part of the system. We will be married for 50 years in 2 months. She is characterologically more sensitive. So she still feels more anxiety than I do normally. And we understand the positives of what we call being anxious. I appreciate her sensitivity to the world. She's much more aware of the nuances of people and of the world. I tend to be more oblivious. She was originally a French professor. Then in order to stay married to me, she went through Gestalt training and gave up her career and spent her career being the #2 person in an organization that worked with people and ran the whole organization according to Gestalt principles. And both our adult children went through Gestalt training. That's what I mean. So we live our lives according to what I would think of our Gestalt principles. One is by my presence, by him seeing me interested, and 2, following his curiosity. But again, the interest isn't necessarily in content. It's in how we interact together. And once you become interested in patterns, in habits, then the whole world opens up to you. It can be very simple, like what shoe do I put on first in the morning? Or when I work with a group of lawyers, litigators, I might notice that they get to work very quickly without saying hello to each other. So my intervention with this group of attorneys was to have them notice that they go to action very, very quickly without connecting. And they didn't know that, because that was just the way life was. So once they notice it, they have the choice of doing it the way they always have, or doing it a different way. Or I work a lot with physicians. And physicians are always in a hurry, so they never have a chance to have an ending. Because the beepers ring and they have to rush off. Or I work with a startup organization, and they're always starting a new project. So they never spend the time thinking, what did we learn from this? So we're all very, what we call, well-developed at certain ways of being. So personally, my wife and I love movies. She likes to get to the movie for the previews. I like to arrive just on time. 50 years, we've never resolved it. But we both like to wait to the very end and watch the credits. So we're the last ones in the movie theater. And that feels satisfying. So our beginnings are different, but our endings are like this. Well, you are asking the core of our model. We do pay attention for how people connect. So for example, a couple, 2 people, come in and their complaint is they fight all the time. So the way they connect is, and they say, this is horrible. We fight all the time. I don't join them and say, that is horrible. Let's teach you how not to do this. Our theory would say, do you know how interested you are in each other? Do you notice that when one person speaks, before you finish your sentence, the other one speaks? And how wonderful it is that you have so much energy for each other. And they first see what's beautiful about that. And that might be enough as they become aware of their pattern. And then I might say to them, do you notice that neither one of you asks each other questions? Or that when one person speaks, the other one speaks a second afterwards. And then I might say, are you interested in trying something different? Each one picking out one question and asking it. And the other one just sitting back. You could answer it or not. And then the other one. They have to trust me. That's the hierarchy. That's the presence. And then they have to be willing to try something different. And they can always go back to the way they were. Amplification or exaggeration is a tool. So if you saw me sitting like this, you might say, Joe, would you be interested in pushing your hands harder? So that would be amplification. Another common technique would be, what would be the opposite? Now the opposite might be this, or it might be this, or it might be this. So once you get beyond simple concepts, there aren't, opposites are incorrect. So once it becomes complicated, beyond simplicity, a new possibility exists. Or I can go from not just here to here, but all the in-between. So we often have techniques that bring people into contact in terms of our polarities. So I can give you an example. One of those moments early in my training that stayed with me, there was a man in this training who I disliked. I couldn't stand him. And I was in therapy, and the therapist asked me, what don't you like about him? And I said, he's stupid, he's sloppy, and he's overly sentimental. So the therapist said, these are disowned parts of yourself. So you have to come in touch with your stupidity, because we're all stupid at times. We all have the capacity to be sloppy and sentimental. And rather than avoid him and judge him, you have to get to know him and become friends with him. And I said, no way. But I trusted the therapist. And I got to know him. I was teaching at a university in the Midwest, and he lived in Maine, which is, I don't know if it's a state above Massachusetts, above Boston. And I went and I visited him with my family. And they ended up moving there about 35 years ago. And I became more aware of my own stupidity, sloppiness, and sentimentality. So I wasn't projecting my polarity onto other people, taking something that I don't own in myself, putting it on you, and making you bad. Life is good and it's bad. And the model is really based on optimism. And whatever happens, I'll deal with it. And that type of optimism is what allows me to try new things, whatever that is. Whether it's something simple like a new piece of food, or coming to a country that I've never been in before, That is what growth and development is all about. We had a rule in our family that you always have to taste it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to eat it. But you always have to taste and try something different. And maybe that's the core of our model, that type of optimism.